So the suggestion now is to have each one's presentations. Let's start by Adriano from GloboNet. Adriano and Darwin, they are here representing the subsea carriers, and they will also talk about remote peering. Good morning. I am part of the IP network engineer team for GlobeNet. The goal here today is to share how we see the importance of peering in Europe and how can we take the remote peering to some other partners here in Brazil. So, how have we started? The GlobeNet network, we have two cables, the north and the south ring. But for this presentation, we should stick to IP network, right? So our IP network has a point of interconnection, Miami, New York, Fortaleza, Rio, and São Paulo. As part of our joint efforts, the idea is to reach contents as fast as possible and cheaper. With that, we carried out some traffic analysis and understood that some of the content coming from Europe were being taken by our offstrings, paid ones. So we had to understand the volume of traffic to understand if we should extend our network to Europe via partners. Then we decided to contract a network to reach Europe. Positive results. So now I will show you what we see from our network in relation to the Brazilian traffic. And not only the Brazilian traffic had justified this effort to reach Europe. We also have networks in Colombia, Venezuela, and with all of that together, we had enough justification to get to Europe. Once we were there, there was a traffic interest. And today, we use such an extension to our own IP network for IX routes, but we also extend that demand as there was an interest shown by our partners who would like to reach the IXs. And with that, we have a system which can reach internet exchanges and to extend those to ISPs in Brazil. We are present today at those IXs: New York, Amsterdam, London, and New York. And Frankfurt, I'm sorry. How do we do that? It's quite simple. There is no magic, nothing complicated about that. We have IX connections. We extend that by the VPN networks to our client who asks, let's say, I want 200 mega, and the advantage of doing that with VPN is that is much easier, 100, 200 mega, 1 giga. No problem to us. We just take the VPN to New York, where we have an interconnection point with the IX. We extend the VLAN to the 6, whatever the partner wants to. I don't know if you can get my point from the slide. That's why we may take to ISP a connection to Europe via a cost where there is no need to invest or maybe to have a server over there to reach those IXs. Here are some tables from D6 Frankfurt showing the importance. 6 TIRA, not only just to Brazil, but to the world, of course. And those statistics, they highlight the importance of those IXs. This is the IX New York statistics for remote peering. There is no standard for remote peering. We chose that solution of taking that throughout a VPN, and it's working fine so far. Total links, that's ours. From our network, the GlobeNet network. We can also see partners network once they connected via L2, but then we lose their visibility. But from GlobeNet, I consider quite important to have flow tools. Without a flow tool, that would be so complicated. Today, since the GlobeNet network to our clients, I see much traffic to Hessner. What's Hessner? As simple as visiting their online page. Well, that makes sense. That is a data center in Germany with a very high traffic volume. Is that worthwhile? Yes, perfect. That's why the flow too is important. You do not want to see at the table your page. So that's a traffic that should be caught in Brazil, not in Europe. Well, for those of you who do remote peering, you should be aware of that. A traffic from Turin going to Brazil, come on, there is one in New York, in Miami. We should consider that. With that flow, you can tell who's using that traffic from the CIX Frankfurt. That is being visualized from the GlobeNet network. São Paulo consumes quite a lot, and you can visualize that by different areas, and then you can tell which area is consuming more traffic. In that case was the D6. Here the Amsterdam ASNS origin. When that chart was designed, I did that for Brazil. I did not consider neither Colombia nor Venezuela, because I want really to have an example, a local example. Well, you know, there's AS, which sends traffic to Brazil, fine. But how is that? What is the content from Europe to Brazil? Why isn't that content coming from São Paulo or from Fortaleza or from Rio de Janeiro, and rather from Amsterdam? Well, we have been seeing much traffic for APTV applications. We have some limitations. We do not open packages. We can just see source and destination. And now talking to our customers, ISPs, we have been doing a test with different PTV boxes, with games, Xbox, and they do look for content. And content from data center with a very important traffic. To larger carriers, the traffic may be more important to someone and not to all, because you might need a traffic, but maybe not 5 giga, but 100 mega or 50 mega, and you have to analyze case by case. You have to understand if that is worthwhile or not. And in my opinion, a partner should have a partner checking the flow for that to be a support and not a problem. Considering content, if I see that there is an American content, fine, it can be, but I have to investigate. I have to know why and how to avoid that. All the ASs here, they have a BGP community. And you can choose just to have a bilateral. Well, there is an interest here for the wall stream. They try to close, you try to close a bilateral with them in some cases. The only way to know what type of traffic you have there, to know if it's worthwhile or not, why am I taking that traffic in Europe or in the States and not in Brazil, you check the site. Now there are new products for Latin America, a game server for Latin America. Why is a game server for Latin America being hosted in Amsterdam? Well, I don't know. We had conducted tests with Xbox and PlayStation, and sometimes the guy who's playing in Brazil is connected to a server in Amsterdam. Well, this is a game reasoning. It's not really my cup of tea, but it's a reality, and we have to face it and get adapted to it. Here we have a traffic coming from AM6. This is a view from the GlobeNet network. As I told you before, we cannot see other networks. It would not make any sense showing you other networks now, he says. Someone mentioned previously about the advantage of connecting or to use to connect to GlobeNet for remote peering. There are advantages, such as direct connection, game service content, video streamer. All of that is here in this data center. They are there, and the only thing I'm sure about is because I see the traffic. And we also deliver solution. We deliver solution, and that's how it works. If our solution does not work, we fix it. Presence at the main AXs. The largest world IXs are here today being represented, and it's very interesting to add that in the peering DB. Sometimes when you connect, you don't even know that there is someone trying to take some traffic to your region, maybe a university or something. Well, I see you are in the Frankfurt 6 AS. Okay, fine. Then you close the peering. And peering is responsible for the internet, as you all know. Another piece of advantage by connecting your routes directly. Once you connect directly to AS, you will no longer see the GlobeNet AS, at least in the international ones. It generates a better visibility to your routes, and that is good for tools and others that do BGP hacking of your net. And also, if your customer has two providers, there you have a greater chance to get traffic from the competitor. This is another important advantage if you connect directly to the IX, to the Internet exchange points. Thank you. Any questions?
Obrigado, Adriano. Chamar o Darwin.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning. It's a great honor to be here in São Paulo for the first time. All conferences, they are addressed in English. But I am from Portugal, so I will speak Portuguese. So, remote peering is the topic, of course. Remote peering has been released by our company this year due to a commercial demand by our customers and also internal commercial demand that led us to develop this operational and active product. At our first phase, we worked with we try to sort out all the business issues, agreements. Our peering port should be converted not only for peering used by MOLA cables, but also for resellers peering. So from a technical perspective, we got prepared. As to transport, this is what we do in our company. We operate submarines systems, so VPN over our NPLS platform. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. And we support all of that with existing sub cables, which the Western African cable system is a cable which links the Western African coast, going through some African countries, going through 3 European countries, and final destination is London. There is an African demand by English colonies to have a system to links. We are under the second upgrade phase of the system. Then we have the SAX, that's our new cable. This is a SAB system which was recently implemented, interlinking Africa to South Africa, Angola, and Brazil with 40 terabits. And then we have a WAX, that is a consortium, and the system is designed for 24 terabytes. Although you see 14 there, it can cope with 24. We link the greatest, the largest PPTs, and we have to partner with those with their own fibers, and now we have a net with 10 giga, which may reach up to 100 gigabytes. Definitions. Let me ask this community, how many of you use remote peering services today or at this moment? So how many? Can you raise your hands? Thank you. Just a few. So the question is quite obvious. So we have strategy. For anyone who acquires this service, you have to have a well-defined strategy, local, global, local. That strategy for peering and net expansion has to be defined. Ben also commented about the business case. A business case should make sense. If it does not make sense, that business case, well, business case is a demand that should make sense for you to buy the remote peering or to extend your net. So these two definitions that you see on the screen, operators like us, Global Net and cables, we have that implemented infrastructure. A customer who would like to buy that service from us, there is a dedicated port with multiple VLANs, and the client indicates what is the IX to which he wants to interconnect anywhere in the world. That's why we have that partnership with the PTTs. From a cost standpoint, with remote peering, the client has a direct partnership with the owner of the infrastructure. There is an installation cost and associated monthly rate for that, but at the IX port, there is no need to pay anything, the cross connection, neither the portal. So that relation is done directly between the client and the infrastructure vendor. Benefits. We may reach those PTTs today. D6, New York and Frankfurt. We also have links. New York Internet Exchange Point also reached Africa. That's the largest. Also in Johannesburg and Cape Town. We also have a point in Angola. That's very important for Brazil and Angola exchange. We also have a partnership with NIC.br, maybe to change paradigms. We've heard that there is much need from Brazil, from Americas to Europe. And how about Africa to Brazil, Europe to Brazil? Well, we have to research, understand, and reach a conclusion. We are working with M6 to see if we can close also that partnership and start delivering services to Amsterdam as well. How to interconnect? That's so simple. We offer a port at the same presence point where the customer is. We carry out a cross connection to that port that we will allocate to the client or to prospective, and then at that port those entities of larger port with 10 to 100 gigas to guarantee a well-served demand with no constraints. And at this single port or single interface, we have a client who had defined VLANs and PPTs. We take that to IX 250 mega or 500 mega. All of that will depend on that previous study that may be fancy to be linked to all those PTTs, but that requires further studies to understand if it's worthwhile or if you will one day get linked to some other points of internet exchange. I would like to thank PeeringDB here on behalf of Arnold. We have everything documented, illustrated. If you have any additional interest, just search for further information and you'll find a list of those places where you can get connected. Use case, I wish I could present that to you, but as we have just released the product, we don't have any case yet, but I guess that by next year at this time, we'll be able to bring some use cases. Let's say that a customer bought one and one of the IX has a problem. Who to contact? Ourselves? How do we work with that? So we hope that in 1 year time we can introduce a very relevant use case.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you.
Obrigado, Darwin.
Thank you. I will call Mario now. Good morning to everyone. I am Mario Gula. I am an engineering director from Alta Rede. What I will show you is our network. I will talk about our strategy, why we connected to the main international peerings. Alta Rede is present in the entire country. Alta Rede emerged in Rio de Janeiro, and little by little it built an optic network. Today, our main capillarity is in the state of Rio de Janeiro, but we're also present in São Paulo, Espírito Santo with our own network, and part of the state of Minas Gerais. São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, within our initial strategy, we try to connect ourselves to all the data centers of the city of Rio de Janeiro and that of São Paulo. So within the strategy, our main objective was to connect ourselves to the main exchange points, traffic exchange points. This strategy of connecting to the main traffic exchange points, well, we grow, and every time you have a new pop-up site of Rio and São Paulo, we try to connect ourselves to the local PICs. This strategy promoted the quality of the internet, and we were able to provide better services to our customers because the peaks are important points when you connect yourself to a customer and to make new business. Currently, we are present in São Paulo, PIC São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Vitória, Fortaleza, Brasília, and we're already present, and we have networks in other cities, but we still haven't connected ourselves yet. Nevertheless, our strategy is to connect ourselves when possible to the local peaks of the city. Within our strategy of connection to the peaks, there's no doubt that, as well as what has already been mentioned, the connection to international peaks has become more accessible, cheaper, and more feasible because of the facility of technology, the technical facility of connecting ourselves, and mainly because of the accessible prices. Therefore, we see international peaks like what happened here in Brazil. Naturally, the Brazilian ASs will start to look for this connection, and they will want to be in these points of traffic exchange, and we believe that the main target is to give quality to your customers. Now, there is no doubt that in addition to the quality that you give to customers, this is a way, as what has mentioned, AS will appear in the main data centers, the main peaks, and the enterprise will be seen as in a different way. This can bring new businesses and bring new opportunities as well. So this was our strategy to connect ourselves to the national and international peaks. Now, this information is simple information. It is very important to have management tools, flow tools, to make the best of the connection that you have with these peaks. We internally, we installed these tools not a very long time ago, about 6 months ago, so we are still making these adjustments. We receive a lot of information. In the past used to be a black box, and now we can see them clearly, and now we can create a strategy for growth and to improve our traffic, to improve our quality, and of course to provide better services to our customers. Very briefly, in this chart that you can see here from our traffic, our total traffic, 30% approximately is transit. We have a number of connections with transit operators. 30% go to these carriers, traffic carriers. 40%, 41% of our traffic comes from the CDNs. We have a number of CDNs in our network. And this reality must be very similar to the most of the ISPs in Brazil. We also have some P&I connections. And these connections represent approximately 14% of our traffic. And here you can see how much of our traffic goes to IX Brazil and in all the IXs that were present, and mainly Rio, São Paulo, as our main operation is still based in the state of Rio de Janeiro. Most of the IX traffic is from Rio de Janeiro because there is no doubt that we want to access the content that is closer. And São Paulo, there's no doubt, as the greatest exchange point of network in Brazil. And we are present here, but the table here shows us that with the CDNs and PNIs, our traffic in IX.br has dropped a lot throughout the time. With these policies of traffic engineer and always looking for content in the closest place. Now the international IXs. Well, I believe that we have been doing this for 6 months. In the beginning, we didn't have all the analysis tools, so we activated in the dark. We were carrying out tests in the dark, but when we deployed the new tools, well, we were able to analyze things accurately, especially verifying what comes through transit. There is no doubt that the content that comes through transit is a content that we want to make direct connections with them, with this that represent a lower cost and represent a better quality for the customer. And also, with this, you can have traffic engineering and you can have better control. With direct connections, you can better control the traffic and the policies of traffic engineering. Now, what we have observed within transit, the content that we receive through transit would be Brazilian contents. Now, obviously, Alta Rede still does not have connections with all the carriers, peerings, with all the carriers or peerings, but there's a lot of traffic that is obtained through transit. So Brazil is number one, then comes the US. And what we observed up till the date was that the other contents are smaller. Especially when they come from South America, this is Argentina mainly, and when they come from Europe, it's England and Canada. Well, Canada is North America, as we have IX, England and Canada appear in transit because Frankfurt, Amsterdam, we are already collecting, from these points. So now we want to analyze this in details. We want to verify where we're driving more content and trying to bring this content directly to our network. And I believe this should be everybody's homework. So here we're showing you our CIX. The international traffic that we have of IX is very small when we compare it to the total amount of traffic that we have in our network. But this is very natural because there is no doubt that the main contents that we receive, and this is a trend, come to Brazil and they establish themselves in Brazil. So when a company has a need to have major traffic in Brazil, the natural pathway is to bring this content to Brazil. This is why we believe that, and when we observe the small volume compared to the rest, but from our point of view, it is very important because of what we mentioned regarding the quality to our customers and visibility and the opportunity of businesses. Other enterprises that are present in the main data centers will see that Alta Rede as a partner to make business in Brazil. Our next steps would be to activate the peaks in England, because we've seen that there are some opportunities for content there, and there's no doubt the US. because they have a reasonable amount of traffic, and we could also increase this connecting other peaks to the United States. Thank you very much to everyone. Here you have my business contacts. Said.
Bom dia, good morning.
Good morning to everyone. I am Said. I am from Mob Telecom. For those that don't know this company, this is the hub of telecommunications of the countries in Fortaleza, and I will talk about this subject. Well, I would like to greet everyone, Julio, Salvador, the entire team here. It's cool to be the fourth to present because both Angola and GlobeNet gave a very technical explanation about this matter, and I will now talk about the view of a businessman, of an entrepreneur, okay? Regarding this matter. So this is a different view, okay? This is the entrepreneurial point of view. We already have peering remote. We are present. We work with GlobeNet. We work with Angola. We work with a number of submarine cable, and our advantage is to have these different options to have remote peering with a number of carriers. We're present in AMX, NAP, London, Rio de Janeiro, and others. And the mobile strategy is to provide the best experience to an end consumer. This could be through a partner that is the provider, or it can be by something else. Our focus is the consumer's experience, the end consumer's experience. Ready. Now, telecom mob presence. For those that don't know mob telecom, here you have the map of Brazil. This map, you can see how many POPs we have scattered throughout Brazil. So we are present. We have strong presence in Brazil, the center, west, northeast, the north, southeast, the south, Brasilia. And we participate of all the peaks that are possible here together with the PTT. There is always one content that you don't have here or there. And in international remote peerings, we also participate in all of them that you can see here. You can see the little logos here. We participate in all of those remote peerings. Now I will talk about the greatest advantages when you participate in these international points. Now, the greatest advantages are that we are able to give our end consumers some type of contents that do not exist in Brazil. For instance, the major contents, Google, Facebook, whatever, all of them, there are certain contents that are in Europe, even in the US, and you don't have that experience in Brazil. So this is a differential. So this is a great advantage that we have. We offer something different. At the same time, as of the moment, you go to Amsterdam, you get there, you have the opportunity to do direct peering with local content or contact with European content or the rest of the world. This is a better experience. Without mentioning quick deployment, cost reduction, you don't have to spend a lot of money, and you eliminate the cost of collocation, and there is a reduction in the IP cost as well. Now, some warnings, because we say that all is a bed of roses, but not everything is a bed of roses. So when we talk about remote peering, we think about latency. Everybody is always talking about latency. This is a buzzword, right? Better latency, this latency. But when we talk about latency, we have to analyze remote peering, and we have to see what is the path of the submarine cable that we're going to use. There's no use going to Amsterdam and then you have simple latency. So the path of the cables has to be intelligent. Where am I going? Going to England, right? Our friend here is going to England. What is the submarine cable that he's going to use? If he chooses bad the cable, he's going to have terrible service. You're going to have a delay here if you don't choose right your submarine cables. And here we have our carriers, and we work with everyone. Okay, we work with all of them. For some content, certainly we have the best latency. The main cities where we're present: São Paulo, Rio, Brasília, Fortaleza. Here, definition. I will talk about remote peering in Brazil. What's happening here in Brazil? The local players more and more are working with IX, are more present, from Porto Alegre to Fortaleza. Today, the PTT of Fortaleza is the PTT that grows most in Brazil. If you're not in Fortaleza, well, I believe São Paulo, Rio, but you have to be in Fortaleza, okay? So MOB is a strong partner of IX. I think that in 2004, 2005, in the beginning, we were one of the first, and we are participating in a number of PTTs in Brazil. We have approached other that we intend to deploy in 2019. We want to participate in them until we become 6 in some case. We want to become 6 in some cases. And a very important point here would be the PTT São Paulo. Everybody talks about PTT São Paulo, and one of our strategies was to be present in all the 4 major PTTs here. So we have these redundancies here. So each PTT has a different type of content. SP 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't have the same content. Some have some things, the others have other things. So it's important to have this diversity. The network architecture has to have this intelligence, and it has to be diverse. Thank you very much. To end here, because I was very brief, I will mention a number of things. Currently, MOB Telecom is an enterprise that is pursuing entrepreneurship. And we like to be entrepreneurs. I would like to thank the IX team for inviting us. And I promise that MOB will always, defend the union of the carriers of everyone. Good morning to everyone, and have a great day. No, this testimonial and everybody's presentation was so interesting. And now we have 10 minutes for our Q&A session. I believe that people from the internet exchanges that have questions and wanted to ask questions to the carriers and to the ISPs, I believe that some explanations were made here. So if you're interested in asking very specific subjects or vice versa, so enterprises can pose questions to the internet exchanges, and our audience can also. I am Wesley Correia. I am from Telecom Consultoria, and I would like to thank the participation of you here and for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. But I would even like to ask you, what is your view about the exchange of regional providers with exchange traffic abroad? Very different. Some of you that are carrier IP that deal with the national market, is it really an advantage for a carrier that deals with 1, 2, 3 cities in Brazil that has a reduced infrastructure to look for traffic abroad, because perhaps they won't save latency? They would be changing 150 milliseconds of direct transport for 110 plus 40. So they would be exchanging 6 by half a dozen. Is it really worthwhile to do this, or would it be better to be more accurate in the right choice of your IP transit? Would this be more efficient? I believe that from my point of view, if a regional carrier chooses the IP transit with good points, I would be that they would have better service if they would invest in a number of small transits of 200, 300, 1 giga to be present in all these points and to generate a demand of special labor that he doesn't have, and he will have to outsource this. I would like to know your point of view if it's really worthwhile to do all of this. I believe that your question is timely. I believe that any regional operator, before hiring an IP transit company, has to see the paths, but it is interesting for a small proportion of your end consumers that are more demanding. They will want this experience, perhaps. Today, for example, 5 years ago, we accessed the internet to go to Wall, to go to Global, to go to the newspaper. Now we want to watch games, movies. Someone from games, if he kicks the ball in one, if he takes more time, he can miss an opportunity and he will lose the game. So the experience of the end consumer is important here. So you have to properly choose these international paths. IP paths. Now, in the case of an international exchange point, can you guarantee this with technical data? We're talking about technical data. You're going to gain 10 milliseconds of latency, and if you choose properly your IP transit, it will provide you the same latency and the same as if you were connected because of 10, 20, 100, 200 mega.
It's about control of your traffic and knowing your traffic is going to be there. So, 10 milliseconds one way or the other potentially doesn't make a difference. But if packet loss is important to you, then maybe having your own transport or using transport rather than IP transit is the route you want to go. And so these sorts of examples, like gaming, where suddenly you have somebody respawn faster than you and you lose the game. Financial transactions, voice over IP services, things where it's actually more about reducing that packet loss and controlling the routes and reducing the number of hops you have actually is much more important than the latency when you're talking small percentages of milliseconds.
Perhaps here the solution would be to bring traffic to exchange points of Brazil, not going abroad, because an idea of an exchange point is to maintain regional traffic that has to be regional. And, like we defend not that someone from Manaus has to exchange traffic when someone in Amapá, when someone in São Paulo. You must have an interconnection that is regional so they don't have to run 1,000, 2,000 kilometers of optic cables. Perhaps, let's say Angola Cables is doing something excellent, bringing the content from there to here, instead of going there and fetch it there. This is something that I've been analyzing. I would like to know what we could do about it. When you ask if it's worthwhile in terms of cost, we believe that. Adriano, could you please speak into the microphone? Yes. The cost, thanks to technology, the cost of reaching these IXs shouldn't be more expensive than what you pay for your IP transit. This is our policy at GlobeNet, because otherwise your bill at the IX is going to be so expensive. Another thing, you said to bring the content to Brazil. There are many variables here. There is a lot of content that you cannot bring to Brazil. Like in Amsterdam, you have to consider the laws, the legal part of content. in Amsterdam, in Frankfurt, well, they're a bit more flexible with internet laws. You will never bring this content to Brazil unless there is a change in the Brazilian legislations. So yes, there are certain contents that you will have to go to Europe and fetch them in Frankfurt, links, Amsterdam. And I believe that the important point is this, to reduce the cost and the control. Control. This is your option if you want to control this traffic or not. In GlobeNet, we have NICs and IP transit. I am an IP engineer. I want you to remain with IP. DNX is to facilitate your life, your logic of how your network works. If you already have the flow, if you want 100 mega for Amsterdam, you have already identified 100 mega of traffic in Amsterdam. You separate a VLAN of your service, you install it there. Now the cost shouldn't be higher than what you pay per IPA transit. Well, cost, and important is not only to assess the cost of transport, but the operational cost of having a professional, because as we're saying, in regional carriers of 1-2 giga, not all carriers have a network engineer that can deal with these policies. This is very expensive for the cash flow of the provider. Sometimes they don't have a router of this capacity so that they can do these things. This is when we say about approaching, it would be optimizing everything. It is important to equalize this cost for transport for a foreign IX point. You need the tools and you need an engineer that is paying attention. No, he doesn't come once a week to see your network. He has to be constantly analyzing this network to maintain this control. But who buys this, buys it because they believe that everything is working in a blink of an eye. But as a network engineer, we know that things don't work in a blink of an eye, and this depends on a good logistics. So thank you very much. This was just my question.
Estão me ouvindo? Agora sim. Antônio Moreiras, do IX.br. Alguns de vocês citaram...
Well, some of you had mentioned in your business cases games and streaming. So my first question is, can you list a name of games or some companies where that takes place? And my second question is, would you run the risk to say why quality is being better or bigger in search to direct contents and not throughout transit? What are the transit or traffic companies doing wrong? I'm talking about the national network willing to have a greater control over the routes. If that's not the case, though, if the guy is just looking for higher quality and he says that he can get a better quality if he gets the content directly from Europe via internet exchange, how come does that happen technically? Could you elaborate or speculate a little bit more about that? In fact, in my opinion, as to quality, I cannot tell you that you have less latency if you connect to Amsterdam via VPN network or normal by my IP transit. I cannot say anything about that, sorry. And you have the IP and MPLS. When you come via VPN, you have a preferential transit there. In our case, GlobeNet, we never have projection at the network, so the quality of our IP transit is the same as in the VPN. We just focus a bit more if to you. To some providers may not, but if to you, if you would like to have your routers better seen abroad, if you'd like to control the traffic, if you want to access IX at your peering DB with more interconnections by yourself, if you have interest and if you have resources, it's worthwhile. That's my opinion. Today, the focus is network architecture. So each region of the country has a different way of doing things. For example, those who live in the countryside, not in the seaside, they spend more time at home, online, games, content, than if someone who lives at the coast that spends more time outside. So our company tries to better understand what is the user's profile, to understand control, and to find the best routes to that public. So it's all a matter of details, and everything is so new yet. But for sure, the experience for someone who plays games, who plays streaming, to live by a VLAN directly to Europe. And in Europe, you can do a direct peering with a game company or a game provider. The quality and the experience is 1,000 times better than ours down here. At GlobeNet chart, they showed a map of the cities, and there is a city in the countryside of the state of Ceará and another one in Maranhão. These two states are really further north Brazil. In Fortaleza, the map was not so hot like those two countryside or interior cities up north of the country. This is my comment. Voltando então à primeira parte da tua pergunta.
The network companies, and I think one of the things that we've seen here is the questions from the floor and the speakers here, all on the access side. And there is the other side of the equation. Is that the content businesses, they're businesses too. They've got to find out and work out what works best for them. So Riot Games, for example, they run the League of Legends game. Their policy is to have hubs. So even in Europe, they're hubbed in Amsterdam, and then they remote peer out to Frankfurt and London. So even when you are playing the game and you feel like you're hosting in your home in Manchester, actually that's really coming out of London or Amsterdam. But it's a lot closer, because for them, they have to have enough density, enough gamers, enough population to make that work. And as I was just saying, I think yesterday, when you end up with a population that's spread over such a vast geography, then those numbers are harder for the content providers to work. So in the UK, for example, the BBC is a huge content provider. They have multiple 100 gig ports in London, but they see demand for traffic all over the world. But it really doesn't make sense for them to actually pop anywhere else in the world, because it's small percentages, a little bit like Mario was saying he sees from out in Europe. And so if you want to be able to have that direct connection with the BBC, and they don't really match this kind of latency issue because it's just content, but you need to then be in London to pick that up through peering, or you pick that up through transit. But from the content provider's point of view, unless you start to get to be hyperscale, or you're using the CDNs, it's really, really expensive to actually get closer to the edge. But we're seeing it happen. We're seeing more and more deployments like that happen. Both in Africa, as I was saying, we see a lot more traffic being localized in Africa, and I think you'll see some of that more happen in Brazil. But there is another aspect to that, and that's language. And it was interesting that in your map, I think it was Mario, you had stats from different countries, and you had Brazil, and then USA, and then Argentina, and then UK, but no Portugal. which surprised me. No. So the language thing that I would expect to see wasn't coming through. And so for sort of English language content providers, so maybe they're doing sports, showing football games or things like that, if there isn't that local language demand, they're not really going to bring that content on site locally. So you need to then figure out what's the cheapest way to get to them, if it's cost. If my users really care about watching that football match live and they miss that second that the goal is scored, they may move to another subscriber. But if actually they're just looking at cat videos and they don't really care if they miss a little bit of the cat video, then it's less important to me.
Thanks, Ben. Vou só aproveitar aqui para comentar, passar aqui também para o Mário. Aí a sua pergunta, Moreira.
The previous questions addressed by Wesley was so important, a detailed analysis before you choose your provider. It may be that you do not even need the remote peering for nothing because they have well-agreed terms, optimized engineering. Let me just give an example of a news case that happened with us. When we started the SACS 2 months ago, but before that, South Africa, which is the greatest African hub, they were after everything in Europe. And the game community, I got involved to the Angola community game, the South Africa game community, to try to understand how they would reach the conclusion that the ping was high, the latency was high. When we released the SACS, the first thing we did was to open a ticket. And the Fortnite is bugging. Fortnite is bugging. I'm not saying about the Fortnite. Where is the Fortnite? And then the guys, they were preparing to see the Fortnite in São Paulo than in Europe. For any reason, the ping was lower than a region, from one region to another. So network and traffic optimization, regardless of the provider you choose, you have to have able engineers to look at that daily and not weekly, as it was mentioned here by GlobalNet. I apologize for missing the beginning of the translation. I'm so sorry. There was a problem here in the device button. Let's go on. So remote peering is what we have in Brazil, but abroad. Initially, companies, they are after cost reduction, as it happened in Brazil. Not like the international peering, where the traffic volume is not so representative, but in terms of quality, small details, they differentiate one service from another. Most operators, carriers, they have a very similar service in terms of infrastructure, Japan, fiber. So small details, they do make much difference in hiring a company or another. If I have 1 minus hope to reach a certain content, and if I can have a traffic control, the transit companies, they are not doing anything wrong, but they are just doing exactly always the same thing. They have a skilled team, but let's consider my growth. I cannot address a task which will affect the quality of third parts, the quality of my service, and give that to third parts. No, I prefer to do that myself. Small details, microseconds, traffic controls, they may represent a big difference to the end user or to the client. We are running late. Just 2 brief questions. Adriano, a question for you. You said that you do some type of content filtering when you transport from Amsterdam to other cities in Brazil. Can you exemplify that? Well, we choose the contents to our IP network, right? When we extend VLAN to ISP, we do not do anything about that. That is the ISP control. Our control, though, and our IP engineer will give a technical lecture at 4:30 today. But basically, we have a problem. Every time that there is a drop in the BGP session, and they thought that the best way to reach the Brazilian one was Amsterdam, but it was not. We talked to engineers, and the way as they manage the network is better to announce to them in Amsterdam. We know that the IP will always get more from their content, but there are some that may happen. Optimization. As you know, we do not only depend on us, but we depend on the rest of the interconnected networks. If anyone does anything wrong, you have to be aware of that, and that is as simple as sending a community. Do not sell to this or to that one. And if you would allow me, I have a question to the representatives from London, Amsterdam, and DCIX. From a security standpoint, the traffic point structure has been done to solve an NDS attack. There is a unicast framework to refrain that. Anything else in terms of using the point of traffic structure for large-scale DDoS attacks? Any initiative from any one of you, as well as there is for DNS structure to refrain attacks using that structure? If there is anything available, any initiative from the traffic exchange point to refrain, to stop DDoS attacks?
Yeah, we at D6 already support DDoS mitigation since a couple of years via the route server, so our customers are able to announce /32 in case of IPv4 even bigger to the route server. This is then propagated via the route service, and all the other participants are able to pick this announcements up, and then the incoming DDoS traffic is already dropped on the floor on the incoming interface. We are already working since a couple of months on a new DDoS service, which will be launched hopefully soon, which will allow customers even to do more than just announce /32 by the route server. They will have a portal where they are able to specify in more detail what to do with the traffic. For example, just to mitigate DNS traffic, or to rate limit it, and so on and so on. And these rules will then be put out on the switches where the traffic then is mitigated.
Okay, I'm mainly going to defer to my much more technical partner on my left here. Arnold spent many years as a CTO of an IX. I've spent no days on the technical side of things. But at Links, we don't do any DDoS mitigation ourselves. It's been quite a heated debate topic over the years with our members, whether should we be getting involved with our members' traffic or not. And at the moment, and things could always change, but at the moment the view is that we, as the IX, do not get involved with that. But we try and provide our members as many ways as possible to cope with attacks. One of the big things, if you were here yesterday, I did a short presentation on us moving to a new network with EVPN, and that part of that is to help, particularly the smaller networks, manage in times of heavy traffic, bad traffic attacks.
Yeah, as for M6 in Amsterdam, basically the same as Ben. We do not provide DDoS mitigation ourselves, but we work closely together with anti-DDoS providers. So any customer that is interested in having these solutions, we can refer them. And we also work together, we're partners with the National Scrubbing Center. That's a Dutch initiative for hosting companies, ISPs that want to have extra capacity or an additional port exclusively for the use of DDoS mitigation. They get a huge discount for that, so we actively help them in order to solve this problem. We do not offer it themselves, but we try to make it as easy as possible for them to help them to get these solutions.
We have to close. I'm so sorry. We are 15 minutes late. We do not have much time for lunch, so we have to close. Thank you so much to all of you. It was a very interesting panel. Thank you.